about the defeats that Russia has faced in Ukraine and how that could impact Putin's position as president. Is he still secure as president? Because something which has happened, which is quite unprecedented, 96 local councillors published a petition yesterday saying that President Putin ought to resign, saying that he's jeopardized the future of the Russian Federation. And they demand, that was the word used, demand, step down now. They notably didn't say who ought to replace him, although according to the Russian constitution, if there's suddenly a vacancy in the presidency, then the prime minister is acting president until such time as a substantive president can be elected. And now these were all councillors from Moscow and St. Petersburg, as in elected to city councils. This is not a significant number, considering there are over 30,000 local councillors in the Russian Federation. But it's a watershed moment. It could build and build. Now, I think Putin's position as president is fairly secure, certainly for the moment. Remember, his current presidential term ends in May 2024. Will he seek another term? I mean, it's likely. Partly he was thinking he could defeat Ukraine and possibly hand on to somebody else that'd be successful for him. But then he saw what happened in Kazakhstan when Nursultan Nazarbayev stepped down in 2019, handed over to his chosen successor, Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, but that didn't go well. He thought Tokayev was a man with no ideas of his own. But then a few years later, when there was the peaceful protests and hundreds of people were shot dead by the Kazakh security forces, then Tokayev turned to Nazarbayev, downgraded his position, ruined his wealth, and all the rest of it, purged his relatives. And Putin thought he could find a retirement job for himself if Russia and Belarus were fully united, and there could be a job above President of the Russian Federation, which would be like head of both Belarus and Russia. But that hasn't happened. And remember, he thought he could integrate Ukraine into that, and boy, was he wrong about that one. So there have been some serious reverses for Russia in the past week. And if it weren't for the death of Queen Elizabeth II, this would be centre stage. And unfortunately, it's been pushed off the headlines by the death of the Queen, because it's very good news for Ukraine. They claim to have retaken 30,000 square kilometers in just, sorry, 3,000 square kilometers in just a week, which is astonishing. Now, they're probably exaggerating, but it's provably true that they've taken back quite a lot of that. So again, even 3,000 square kilometers, we're only about 0.5% of Ukrainian territory, but it's still good news. And considering it took the Russians months to take this territory, the Ukrainians just retaking it in a few days is very impressive indeed. There is disquiet in Russia about this. This is something that even the Russian media can't cover up and spin. They're admitting it even through official channels, not just through Telegram, social media, and so on, and saying, "Oh, these are planned withdrawals for the purpose of regroupings." This has been met scornfully by even pro-Kremlin commentators saying, "Oh yes, this is another victorious retreat, is it?" Quite often it's a rout. They've left behind tanks and other heavy equipment in usable condition. If they're going to retreat, if they had to leave behind the heavy equipment, they could at least sabotage the tanks and artillery such they couldn't be used by the Ukrainians, blow up the fuel tank or whatever you need to do. But it shows you they had to skedaddle that fast. Just get into the fastest vehicle, a truck, even a civilian bus, and get out of there. And some places it's claimed that Ukrainians outnumber the Russians 8-1. Now, well, what purpose is all this land? Well, sometimes then you control the roads and the railways, and the Russians will find it more difficult to supply their troops further west. And there were reports of fighting outside Donetsk airport 2 days ago. If the Ukrainians can get all the way to Sea of Azov, then they'll break that land corridor. The Russians will no longer have a land corridor from Russia itself all the way towards Kherson. So the Russians in the Kherson sector will have to be supplied via Crimea. And remember, from Crimea, there are only two very narrow isthmuses connecting the Crimean Peninsula to mainland Ukraine. Now, the Ukrainians could maybe fairly easily block that. So the Russians are facing big problems. If they should have withdrawn from Kherson, just gone to the east of that river, except Kherson's not that important, rather than have those troops enveloped, possibly forced to surrender. But they're not doing it. So I think he'll start trying to send more troops there. But he obviously doesn't have very many troops to spare, which is why the 2,000 Russian peacekeepers in Nagorno-Karabakh meant to keep the peace between the Azerbaijanis and Armenians. Most of them have been withdrawn, leading to a recrudescence of the conflict there. For the Azerbaijanis recognize it as a golden opportunity to move forward. the Armenians today put out an official appeal to Russia to come and help them because this Azerbaijani advance. Remember, Armenia is a former military ally of Russia through the Collective Security Treaty Organization, but that's not working for Armenia because Russia's got no troops and no equipment to spare. So Putin trying to recruit those 137,000 troops by New Year's Day 2023. Well, it's not going to happen. It would take 6 months to put them through basic training and so on. So with such a huge population, 140 million people, something like 40 million military-age males, and of course, women can join the armed forces to do and can be fantastic. But they're far better than I am, women soldiers. But anyway, if he introduced conscription, he could call up a lot of people, but he's not doing so because he realised the war's not that popular. Had he done so right at the beginning, when there was pro-war euphoria, this could have had an effect. The war's been going on for 202 days now. If he'd had conscription right now, he could have got people through basic training already. Now, most Russian men have to do military service at the age of 18, do a year. You can avoid it if you go to university. It's only a minority that go to university. But even calling back those who've already done their military training some years before, they need a refresher course of a few weeks. Sometimes they're not even had a proper refresher course before being sent to the battlefront. But they do have a large reservoir of manpower they're not drawing upon because Putin knows they'll be so unpopular. He's willing to send the working class, ethnic minorities, people from the remote regions. He doesn't want to send the Moscow bourgeoisie because that could be a wellspring of opposition. And notably, all these opposition local councillors who signed that petition against him came from either Moscow or St. Petersburg. And the two big metropolises, these are the centres of the liberal opposition and the intelligentsia. So he really doesn't want to send Muscovites or Peterburgers to fight, lest it provoke more opposition. So it obviously is bad news for him, but he's not threatened yet. The casualties are not high enough yet. Maybe 90,000 between killed, captured, wounded, or missing. Out of a population of 140 million, you can sustain that. And yes, sanctions are having an effect, but not enough of effect yet. It'll get worse. Now he's cutting off the gas sales to Europe. That'll hurt Europe, but he's playing for time. He reckons, as Tsar Nicholas I notoriously said, that his best generals are generals January and general February. Now, this is not in the way you might think in Russia. It's not that a foreign invading army can't cope with the cold. The Ukrainians are not invaders. Ukraine is as cold as Russia. The thing is, he thinks he might be able to freeze the European Union into submission, into cutting off weapons and funding for the Ukrainians. And the Ukrainians just proved that it really is worth funding them and it is really worth providing weapons. They're going to use them. They'll put them to great effect. This is by no means a lost cause for Ukraine. And Ukraine's gained a lot of ground. And so when we come to winter, be largely a stasis. They're that bit further forward. But the oil and gas prices will be so high, he thinks the Europeans will soon be on their knees, imploring him to sell them oil and gas and promising to cut off weapons and funding for the Ukrainians in return, to end sanctions on Russia. I don't think it's going to work out for him. The Ukrainians are fairly confident they can make it through this winter. It won't be easy. They've got their gas supplies up to 80% of capacity. They rarely make it up to 100% of capacity, even in a good year. And they've got a plan to get through this. But much depends on how chilly this winter is. If it's an average winter, the European Union will manage. It'll be difficult, but it's doable. If it's a very mild winter, it'll be easy. If it's a severe cold winter, then Putin might actually get what he wants. And at the moment, it's too early to say. Weather forecasts can't tell you months in ahead just how bitter this winter is going to be. So we're not seeing mass protests on the street. I mean, that could happen in a few months. I don't think so. But as I say, I believe this war is going to go on for a year and a half. And really, just Western countries are not providing enough weapons, not heavy weapons, not long enough range weapons. There was an open letter signed by 19 former US military generals calling upon President Biden to step up the support, saying that, Ukraine can win this one, but we're just not giving them the tools that they need to do so. And this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to absolutely wreck the Russian military. The potential adversaries of the United States in a conventional war are number one, Russia, number two, China, number three, Iran. And so it's Russia's actually invading other countries, actually illegally occupying other countries. The others are not. So do it now whilst we still can. And then if you neutralize Russia as a serious military force, that's a potential ally that China and Iran don't have. You can concentrate on those ones much more. Thank you for watching my channel. So please subscribe, and please, to be on Patreon, please donate on PayPal. georgecallahan79 at gmail.com. Bye.